welcome everybody. Be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button.
I remember in middle school when you felt self-conscious if you were the last one to go through puberty. That really went topsy-turvy, didn't it?
Sometimes the it's too much explaining yourself and it's too apologetic.
Be sure to hit the notifications bell.
I actually do believe Israel won't just bomb countless civilians.
Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to put this up on your Facebook.
You have to be kind to people. Being kind is the guys in this mess in the first place.
Put this up on your Reddit.
Chile is a country.
Be sure to cut and paste a link to this to go into your favorite Facebook chat group.
It's good to see so many normal people in here.
Now, spanking isn't just my deep, dark personal secret. It's America's deep, dark secret.
I've never seen it explained so simply anywhere.
Put this on WhatsApp. Put this on Telegram. Put this on your favorite messenger app.
Hello and welcome to the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. I'm your host, an Untitled Anarchist Seagull called Elise. How is everybody doing today, chat? Yesterday those of us who grew up with Blossom had our childhoods ruined a little bit by watching the sort of shit that comes out of my Imbiolic's mouth today. And I've got a few options, one of which is, of course, to continue with that particular bin fire of the vanities. But we've also got, let's see, Caleb Muppet, Superman and the Spiritual War Within Communism, which he puts in quotes. I mean, any communism he's associated with certainly does belong in quotes, so let's just be clear about that, but I don't think that's why he's doing it. We've got Jonathan Tobin, the completely unimpressive, low-energy editor-in-chief of the Zionist propaganda network JNS-TV, affirming the genocide smear against Israel fuels anti-Semitism. No. Israel doing genocide does. And then we've got another of his, Jewish anti-Zionists can't be part of our big tent community. And it's like, when did any of us want to be? Like, I don't care how fucking big the tent is, it's full of shite. And then we've got Xanderhole, who I haven't looked at in a bit. Hassan desperately tries to control the narrative as H3H3 exposes his toxic circle. I mean, there's a bit of Spider-Man meme going on here. If Xanderhole's going to talk about people having toxic circles. Then we've got Twat Mulch. Here's why Indigenous Peoples Day is completely pointless. I'm sure that will be very enlightening. And on a channel I've never heard of called Jake Newfield, we've got Destiny and Einat Wilf talking about the problem with Zionism and Palestinianism. There'd be some exciting both sides action right there. Bonsoir, Adrien. How you doing? Oh, also, I forgot almost. Where is it? I have to scroll up a little bit for this. We have a video. I actually, unlike most videos on here, I actually did watch this one ahead of time because it just looked good. This is, it should be interesting, and the jabronis in this case would be the IDF. It is Greg Stoker and John Elmer talking about just how much the Israeli military sucks. Yeah, it's called Failing on All Fronts. Israel Assaults Northern Gaza as Resistance Ramps Up Operations with John Elmer. Sure, that will be quite interesting. So, we got a bunch of options here. Any other preferences anyone's got? Einat Wilf, anyone not familiar with her, is an Israeli politician with the extremely racist Labour Party. She also used to be in Israeli military intelligence, Unit 8200, which is their version of the NSA, and has taken a few resistance hits. I don't know, he might. And she claims that the Palestinian right to return is just a conspiracy to destroy Israel. So, yeah, some great both sidesing going on there. I think we might just start out, have a look at that, yeah, I was thinking, I'm kind of curious about that myself. I'm curious about all of them, but let's see. Okay, where is it? Yes. I'm also very curious about why he puts communism in air quotes there.
Folks, if you are familiar with this YouTube channel and with my rhetoric, you will all know that I'm
I think we're familiar with Caleb's rhetoric, aren't we, chat?
very fond of pointing out
and
the origins of a very American fictional character.
Wow, we're already getting into some of the best pausing action we've heard from him in a while. Like, that was like 5 minutes in between words there.
He lives as mild-mannered reporter Clark Kent, but he's actually born on another planet. He comes from humble Smallville, Kansas, and whenever danger arises, he runs to the nearest phone booth and changes into his wild costume with a cape.
It's not a particularly wild costume, to be honest. But I guess, I mean, looking at his fashion sense, I guess anything with color in it is wild.
And flies into action. Faster than a speeding bullet. Faster than a locomotive. Able to leap a tall building in a single bound. Look up, it's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman.
Like, really? He's doing this, you see, just in case there's somebody in the chat that isn't familiar with the character of Superman, but maybe they heard the introduction, the original introduction from like the 1940s film serial.
And I've pointed out that not only is this cultural icon, this fictional character invented in 1938 by two comic book writers in Cleveland, Ohio. Not only is Superman a very American cultural icon, superheroes as a genre are identified with American culture and American media around the world, but a Superman is...
Why? He's like literally introducing us to the concept of fucking Superman here.
is progressive. Superman fought the Ku Klux Klan. Superman fought for labor unions and workers' rights.
Northern Ohio,
The villain is a maniacally evil capitalist who's always scheming against the people. And Superman,
Man, like, how many pauses are we gonna get? Like, first of all, he's still explaining the premise of Superman. Does anyone need that?
defends the people of Metropolis, against this ruthless techno-fascist who's trying to suppress them and scheme against them and harm them in order to advance his own profits.
But he's making line go up, and that's what communism is, according to Caleb.
And while it may seem like a coincidence now, in the year of 2024, it was no coincidence that in 1938, Superman took on the name Man of Steel, which you all know. One says the first.
I mean, I suppose it isn't a coincidence, because the guys who wrote the comic decided specifically to nickname him that. So, okay, you realize he didn't like take that on his own. Like, the character did not just get up and say, "I'd like to have a nickname. I'm going to call myself Man of Steel." Writers did that. Yeah, it's definitely not a coincidence, Caleb.
Man of Steel. In Russian, Stalin. Superman called himself Stalin. And the fact that he went around opposing racism.
Okay, now, he's quite right that the name Stalin comes from the Russian word for steel, stal. But I've never heard this, and I want to know, is this something he's just making up? I'm not finding any indication that the creators of Superman were thinking that.
The fact that he fought against the Nazis, the fact that he fought for labor unions, the fact that he battled against a ruthless, maniacal, technocratic fascist.
You know, except I can't help but mention that the other thing, I mean, he left out one of the very specific things that they're always having Superman say, especially in the older, in the older incarnations: truth, justice, and the American way. See, I don't think that was going to. I think that they probably specifically put that in there to make him anti-Soviet, actually.
The fact that he fought against the Ku Klux Klan, all of that points to Superman being a progressive, being
woke,
somebody who would have fit in pretty well with the Communist Party of the United States. But Superman doesn't fit exactly what we think of when we think of a communist.
Well, yeah, because Superman, with all of his power, does not... I mean, I don't know, I'm not a big comic book person, and the only Superman I've seen, apart from, all I've seen is, the first 4 movies, and that was a very long time ago. So, I might be missing something, but I don't believe there was ever a Superman where he helps the workers seize the means of production. Despite the fact that we've established by, I think it was Superman 2, that he can make the world turn around the other way on its axis in order to turn back time. So if he could do that, you would think he might be able to also change the relations of production in a single bound? So, yeah, I don't know.
Superman doesn't like violence. Superman is humble and mild-mannered. He's from the wholesome Midwestern state of Kansas.
By wholesome, he means white.
Superman's a very humble guy.
You just said
Doesn't
that.
want to be famous. He could rule the entire world, but he doesn't.
Yeah, there was.
Superman
I was.
is a lot of things that we don't.
Hey, Raven G. Yeah, I was looking it up because when he said this thing about it's no coincidence that he's called Man of Steel because the word steel. Yeah, Red Sun. I found that when I was Googling it to see if there was anything to this or if he was just the very first person to suggest that that is where that came from.
Associate with communism and socialism in our time, but which would have fit in very, very well with the Communist Party of that era. Folks, I want to show you 2 clips of film.
Oh, I mean, I have to say, I really hope Thought Slime is aware of this, because Thought Slime loves some superhero comics, actually knows about them, and always does great content when it's something to do with fucking Caleb Muppet. This needs to be brought to Thought Slime's attention.
I think I've shown both of these on this stream previously, but I'm going to show them both right now. Because there may be people who are watching this for the first time, and I want them to see this. This first one...
Watching what for the first time? You or someone telling them about Superman?
This was an official speech by the Vice President of the United States, Henry Wallace. This was a World War II speech.
God, he has such a fucking hard-on for Roosevelt.
Century for the Common Man. It was made into a short film that was shown to all the soldiers during World War II.
Well, I think it's not so much you don't know what Caleb is talking about, is that Caleb doesn't know what Caleb is talking about. We can sort of chalk this one up there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here, I'll drop the link. If people want to, like, mention it to him... Here's the video. Because I think that he would have a good time with this.
World War II. The Vice President of the United States gave this speech during the fight against Hitler, and the USA was...
God, could he get a webcam that does better than 720? It's like, though his books are in better focus than his fucking face. And I already had the beginnings of an ocular migraine aura earlier today on stream with some of you, if River Rune's in there, anyone who was watching then. Like, this is not helping that. His face. Like, why is your face so out of focus?
Aligned with China, Russia.
Hey, River Rune.
Against fascism. And we had a president who had met with Communist Party members at the White House. We had a vice president, Henry Wallace.
Yeah, he met with Communist Party members at the White House. Not because he actually liked the Communist Party, and certainly not because he was any kind of communist, notwithstanding what the John Birch Society say. And if Caleb's already hanging out with the Moonies, how long can it be before he hangs out with the John Birch Society? I mean, he's got the bad suit, and that seems to be the main requirement for membership other than being a fucking fascist. But he was doing that because the FDR administration was trying to deal with massive working class upheaval, and the Communist Party was quite strong at the time, so you couldn't ignore them. And the other thing is, once the war started, the Communist Party was actually considered quite useful as kind of a liaison with the Soviet Union.
He's been a member of the Socialist Party. We've been the Secretary of Agriculture.
We only just started.
Very powerful speech.
What you missed was Muppet spending like 8 whole minutes telling his audience what Superman is. And about 50% of that time was spent pausing in the middle of sentences. Oh, on my birthday. And 3 years, May 1942, 3 years to the day before Germany surrendered. Wow, this is wonderfully blurry. Groove into this music. In a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Henry Wallace.
We who in a formal or an informal way represent most of the free peoples of the world are met here tonight
Sorry.
in the interest of the millions in all the nations who have freedom in their souls, to let those millions in the other countries know that here in the United States are 130 million men, women, and children who are in this war to the finish.
Having not been there from the start.
Our American people are utterly resolved to go on until they can strike the relentless blows that will assure a complete victory, and with it win a new day for the lovers of freedom everywhere on this earth.
It's kind of interesting to watch this sort of speech from this sort of the early days of the creation of the post-World War II international institutional order, as the U.S. is currently burning through the entire post-World War II international institutional order in order to commit genocide.
This is a fight between a slave world and a free world. Just as the United States in 1862 could not remain half slave and half free, so in 1942 the world must make its decision for a complete victory one way or the other. Down the years, the people of the United States have moved steadily forward in the practice of democracy.
They're still not very good at it yet.
When the freedom-loving people march, when the farmers have an opportunity to buy land at reasonable prices and to sell the produce of their land through their own organizations, when the workers have the opportunity to form unions and bargain through them collectively.
Is he going to say that this is communism? Is that where we're going with this? The, like, just fucking Keynesian welfare state capitalism?
And when the children of all the these opportunities are open to everyone.
Oh, he skipped over something there.
But to the leaders of the Nazi Revolution, Satan now is trying to lead the common man of the world back into slavery and darkness. For the start.
I mean, this would be a moment if, like, Caleb Muppet were actually serious about any of the things he presents himself as, to point out that this is a bit rich considering that the U.S. was leading an alliance of colonial powers that were very much not interested in freedom for their colonies after the war, and in fact fought wars for like 20-30 years afterwards in order to avoid them having any kind of freedom.
The truth is that the violence preached by the Nazis is the devil's own religion of darkness. So also is the doctrine that one race or one class is by heredity superior, and that all other races or classes are supposed to be slaves. The march of freedom of the past 150 years has been a long, drawn-out people's revolution.
Oh, okay, so he's gonna seize on people's revolution, and that's what he's gonna do with this. Like, yes, if you, like, leave out the historical context, if you leave out the institutional context, and focus on one or two words, essentially, if you treat Henry Wallace the way liberals treated Barack Obama in about 2008, then you can construct a communist out of him, I guess. I don't know why you're doing it. I mean, I guess it's Halloween and this is sort of a Frankenstein sort of thing that he's doing? I don't know.
This great revolution...
I get him.
There were the American Revolution of 1775, the French Revolution of 1792, the Latin American revolutions of the Bolivarian era.
But not the ones that are trying to happen now. We've got the... Well, they didn't have the CIA yet. They just had the Marines to stop those.
The German Revolution of 1848. The Russian Revolution of 1918. Each spoke for the common man.
Yeah, and okay, so he's gonna say that's proof too. But of course, the US and the Soviet Union were in a fucking alliance at the time. Of course they were going to be saying things like, I mean, actually during the Hitler-Stalin Pact, one of the things the Nazis did was actually sort of cool it on specifically anti-communist or specifically anti-Soviet propaganda a little bit. Specifically because it's a thing you do for your allies, because when they see you slagging them off, they start to wonder if you are in fact serious about being allies. Oh wow, I just noticed this is a 2.5 hour video. Is he just gonna stare at this fucking speech the whole time?
Some went to excess, but the significant thing is that the people groped their way to the light. The people are on
The people grope their way to the light.
a march toward even fuller freedom than the most fortunate people of Earth have hitherto enjoyed. No Nazi counter-revolution will stop it. The common man will smoke the Hitler stooges out into the open in the United States, in Latin America, and in India. He will destroy their influence. No Lavals, no Mussolinis will be tolerated in a free world. Lavals, no Mussolini. No
Wait.
Nazi counter-revolution will stop him. The common man will smoke the Hitler stooges out into the open in the United States, in Latin America, and in India.
Well, until the US realizes how useful it is to have the Hitler stooges in Latin America, because you can teach them how, you can use them to teach your puppet regimes how to torture people. He is reacting. He's staring and, like, stroking his kind of beard. Yeah, I mean, he's looking at this like it's the first time he ever saw it, too. Like, surely the reason he's bringing this up is because it's a speech he's seen or read and is significant to him. And therefore he should be pointing out important moments and making points about why he's showing us this. He's just fucking staring at it.
No Mussolinis will be tolerated in a free world. The people, in their millennial and revolutionary march toward manifesting here on earth the dignity that is in every human soul.
Well, for a second I thought he said manifesting hero nerds. And I thought maybe this is where he's going to get the Superman tie-in.
Their credo, the 4 freedoms enunciated by President Roosevelt. We who live in the United States may think there is nothing very revolutionary about freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and freedom from the fear of secret police.
I mean, I actually, considering that he's saying this not too long after the Palmer raids happened, I mean, remember, you've got, like, Japanese Americans in concentration camps as he's saying this. I have a feeling that actually maybe a lot of people in the US at the time might have felt that some of that would have been a bit of a revolutionary change in their lives.
But when we begin to think about the significance of freedom from want for the average man, then we know that the revolution of the past 150 years has not been completed. Either here in
I mean, he has made references. I've seen him in previous videos talking about Henry Wallace, talking about all this stuff. So there's no way he's seeing this for the first time. He brought this on because he has a thing for Henry Wallace.
Or in any other nation in the world. We know that this revolution cannot stop until freedom from want has been attained.
Which, again, does not actually necessarily mean much of anything. I mean, you can do the exact... Which is why it's so handy for Caleb Maupin when I think about it. Because he very specifically does not seem to show much interest in fundamentally changing the relations of production, the fundamentals of the economic system. He just talks about raising living standards, which is well and good, except that does not change the fundamental problem at the heart of the system that constantly puts downward pressure on working class living standards.
And now, as we go forward toward realizing the four freedoms...
Yes, he praised the rough... God, he's so fucking easy. His people are such cheap dates. I mean... Yes, he praised the Russian Revolution. They were in an alliance with the Soviet Union at the time. He wasn't going to slag it off. Not in a major wartime speech that was meant to be shown internationally as well. I mean, the whole Four Freedoms thing was a huge part of U.S. war propaganda, and a big part of getting other countries to fully commit to either supporting the U.S. war effort or actually joining the Allies outright.
I'd like to talk about four duties.
Are we ever gonna hear you say anything now, Caleb?
That every freedom, every right, every privilege has its price, its corresponding duty, without which it cannot be enjoyed. The four duties of the People's Revolution, as I see them today, are these. The duty to produce to the limits. The duty to transport as rapidly as possible.
Oh, hang on. Actually, this could be interesting.
As I see them today, are these. The duty to produce to the limit.
So the duty to make your, production quotas.
The duty to transport as rapidly as possible to the field of battle. The duty to fight with all that is in us.
God, his fucking super chats. He's taught them so well in materialist analysis that they just think that this is because they don't make them this way anymore. No, there were very specific historical conditions that make something like this make a speech like this happen. Make a guy who would make that sort of speech end up in a position to give it as U.S. Vice President.
The duty to build a peace, just, charitable, and enduring. The fourth duty is that which inspires the other three. We failed in our job after World War I, but by our very errors we learned much. And after this war, we shall be in position to utilize our knowledge in building a world which is economically, politically, and I hope spiritually sound. There must be neither military nor economic imperialism. Some have spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering, the century which will come out of this war, can be and must be the century of the common man.
Yeah, I mean, this is wartime rhetoric. And they knew they knew that if you wanted to really get everybody that you needed on board with the war, you had to at least make these sorts of noises. I mean, by 1945, you look at internal planning documents, and they were very clearly not talking about the century of the common man. They were talking about, Jesus Christ, why we're saddled with all these slogans that are actually giving working class people, especially in the global south, all these fucking expectations, and it's coming back to bite us.
If we really believe we are fighting for a people's peace, all the rest becomes easy. Production, yes. It'll be easy to get production without either strikes or sabotage. Production with a wholehearted cooperation between willing arms and team brains. Enthusiasm, persistence, energy, steered to the tempo of keeping out everlastingly day after.
God, how long is this going on?
Knows as well as those of us who sit in on the War Production Board meetings that we here in the United States are winning.
I'm skipping ahead because I want to know if he's actually going to say
So that
things.
was a World War II speech from the Vice President of the United States. And in that speech, he called for
Okay, so he's just going to summarize the thing we just watched. That's the extent of his commentary?
the elimination of want in the world, freedom from want. In that speech, he said that workers should have the right to form unions, that farmers should be able to acquire land, that education should be available to all.
Yeah, like literally, this is such basic, like, I mean, there's nothing particularly impressive about any of that. He's gonna try to, I mean, yes, nice, but he's gonna try to make communism out of that? I'm interested to see how he's going to try to do that.
And he hailed the American Revolution, the German Revolution, the French Revolution, the South American anti-colonial revolution.
Interesting that, okay, there were two German revolutions that he could have hailed there. Because there was also the German Revolution of 1918. The one that actually, on the one hand, got rid of the Kaiser, on the other hand, it sort of petered out. It ended up being heavily repressed. Oh, that's quite the freeze frame I've got there. Check that out, Chad. Check out this facial expression I've just given him. Feel free to screenshot that and meme it. That's great. That's ooh. But I mean, specifically not the revolution or the attempted revolution of the German working class against the imperialist war industry in 1918. He specifically avoided that one.
And the Russian Revolution. He talked about a need to end both economic and militaristic imperialism. And
Yeah.
a century for the
Right.
common man. And that was the Vice President of the United States.
Yeah, in the midst of a massive world war from which the U.S. at that point already knew if they won that thing, it was going to be really big for U.S. imperialism. So they had a really strong incentive to get as many people on side as possible. Like, he's talking about this thing as if there hasn't been history since the speech happened. I mean, it's one thing to be this kind of starry-eyed about that speech if it's new, if it just came out. I mean, you wouldn't want somebody who is that starry-eyed about such a speech to think of themselves as somebody's, like, fucking, I don't know, ideological leader or something like that. Not very innovative politics. But, you know, we're going on, what, let's see, 1942, so 82 years of history we've had since that speech was made. We've even got the declassified records from that period and the period immediately preceding and following it. So we can talk about it as something other than just this fucking superficial, oh neat, he gave a shout out to the Russian Revolution.
This was the final State of the Union address from the President of the United States. This was the last State of the Union speech by Roosevelt. 2 years later, 1944, right before he died, his final State of the Union speech.
In our day, certain economic proofs have become accepted as self-evident. A second Bill of Rights, under which a new basis of security and prosperity can be established for all, regardless of station or race or creed. Among these are the right to a useful and remunerative job, the right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation, the right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a return which will give him and his family a decent living.
Yeah, all of this stuff is so vague. Well, God, this is impressively blurry.
The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom, freedom from
Yeah, see, and this is where it breaks down, because what you're just saying there is this. I mean, that's the right to exploit.
competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the...
What the fuck does adequate mean, though?
economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. The right to a good education. All of these rights spell security. And after this war is won, we must be prepared to move forward.
Yeah, none of that shit happened.
Of these rights to new goals of human happiness and well-being. For unless there is security here at home, there cannot be...
Skipping ahead.
To give long-winded explanations anymore. The people see, the people understand. What they need is a voice to express it for them, and an organization to rally them. The people are going to march forward. With the people will belong the victory.
Yeah, that was the Communist Party of the late 1930s. And Superman would have fit in very, very well.
That's why we went through all of that, so that he could say, see, Superman would fit in really well? Like, is that seriously why we just watched all that shit?
In the Communist Party of the 1930s. And the Communist Party was part of the Roosevelt coalition that supported labor unions, that created unemployment insurance, and they were the anti-Jim Crow faction of the Roosevelt coalition. The leader of the communist...
CLR James has a few words to say about the CPUSA's record on racism and Jim Crow and segregation in that time.
Congress was a member of the House of Representatives from the American Labor Party, Vito Marcantonio. He was an Italian-American. He was originally a Republican, but he quit the Republican Party and he started his own party called the American Labor Party, and he was elected in Harlem, New York City. I'll show you his picture. Vito Marcantonio. And Vito Marcantonio was elected to the U.S. Congress, and even though
he italicizes people's names.
Far away from the Jim Crow South. Vito Marcantonio, when he was in the U.S. Congress, Vito Marcantonio, who used to read from the Daily Worker, the Communist Party newspaper, into the U.S. Congressional Record, who represented Harlem in the U.S. Congress. Every chance he got, he would propose an anti-lynching bill. A law that would impose the death penalty for anyone who engaged in the practice of lynching black men.
Wait, so you're saying that maybe there was some stuff going on under Roosevelt and Wallace that wasn't so great, that maybe casts all this talk about all the freedoms and the People's Revolution in maybe kind of a different light? Like, to the extent that actually, during the Nuremberg trials, the U.S. representatives at the court kept on pressuring, when they had the section of the trials dealing specifically with the Nuremberg laws, it was a British prosecutor handling that part of the case. And the U.S. representatives were really, really uncomfortable because it was very hard not to notice that the Nuremberg laws looked a lot like the laws that were in place all over the U.S. at the time.
And that was not popular with the Democrat Party because it was still the party of the Jim Crow South. But that did not stop Vito Marcantonio because there were overwhelmingly black people in Harlem in his district, and he was a communist who stood against racism every time he could. Vito Marcantonio...
So if Then why did he found his very own party exactly? Like, if he was specifically a communist, why wasn't... Yeah, like, what's the history there? Now I'm actually kind of curious. Because we know fucking Muppet is not a reliable narrator when it comes to who's a communist. Okay. Okay, let's see. I'm just curious. Yeah, after passing the New York bar, Marcantini began practicing law. First for Foster, LaGuardia, and Cutler. As a Republican, he received a warm write-up in the New Masses. Oh, no, he didn't found it. He became a member of the American Labor Party. But, let me see. Does it say anything about him? Communist Party? Okay, so... he was accused of being a communist front. Oh, okay, so the Communist Party actually did back the ALP. So, that's what I was trying to... I was not familiar with the American Labor Party. And I was curious... Sí, el Partido Comunista de China no es un partido comunista.
Would get up and propose the anti-lynching
Pero aquí no se trata del Partido Comunista de China, estamos hablando de otra cosa.
bill and be voted down.
So, I had been wondering if he joined the ALP and not the CPUSA specifically because there was some sort of a split, but actually the ALP seems to be sort of like their popular front organization, sort of like the Working Families Party is for the Democrats.
Every time. And the Communist Party was part of the Roosevelt coalition. And they wanted friendship with the Soviet Union. They wanted friendship with China. They wanted to oppose Wall Street, to oppose fascism, to oppose racism, to support labor unions. And in the final years of his life, Roosevelt proposed that economic Bill of Rights. The right to a job, universal employment, the right to decent wages, the right to health care, the right to an education. An economic Bill of Rights was proposed.
I'm going to skip ahead because it's like...
Seeks to socialism, the first stage, public ownership with rational control of means of production.
Like, okay, we've seen this before.
Reuben Osborne says, we've made a big mistake because people have loyalty to their country. Osborne says,
now, okay,
this explanation of the Freudian understanding of psychology that I've ever heard. It explains what the concept of the subconscious is. It explains the interpretation of dreams. It explains transference. It explains projection.
Why the fuck are we talking about transference?
The Oedipus complex, you name it. It's all in there, the stages of development. And at the very end of the book, Reuben Osborne says, we've made a big mistake because people have loyalty to their country. People have loyalty to their national heroes. And we communists have handed those things over to the fascists. And if we...
Well, except that a lot... That's not a mistake. It's the fact is that a lot of the so-called national heroes of the U.S. are simply much better suited to fascism than they are to communism. If you know anything about them.
You want to build a successful movement. We need our movement to identify with the good things in the history of every country. And this book, the follow-up book, The Psychology of Reaction, makes the case even stronger. And it says basically fascism is an evil movement that preaches bigotry and destruction and economic degrowth. But
it does not. First of all, I will be absolutely shocked if Ruben Osborne said that fascism preaches degrowth. Oh, another great freeze frame. Check that freeze frame. I'm very happy with that. Wasn't going for it, but I'll take it. I will be shocked if he said anything about economic degrowth, but it's simply not true. That is not what fascism is about. Fascism is about actually getting economic growth working again in a situation where capitalism is in crisis and the working class needs to be taken down a peg. Fascism is very pro-growth. Fascism is very pro-productivity. It's anti-worker because it is those things.
It appeals to some of the most healthy emotions that people have.
Which ones?
Whereas communism is a very rational movement that seeks to organize the means of production, but it appeals to some of the most negative and deviant feelings that people have.
Like
what?
We
all have different impulses and drives within us. We all love our country.
What does that even mean? Like, what do you mean we all do? Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, I don't even know most of this country. I've seen a fair bit, but I mean, I can't honestly say that I am enamored with every bit of it. If you mean everybody in the fucking country, fuck no. There's plenty of assholes. Like, and like, if you mean like the fucking nation state, that sucks shit. Always has. Needs to go. So, like, what the fuck does this mean?
Don't love your country. Bullshit. You don't love it on a conscious level. You might be mad at the government. You might be repulsed by many of the bad things in U.S. history. But I can guarantee you, if you're an American and I flew you to the other side of the planet,
I would thank you, depending on where you drop me. Because, like, I have to say, the first time I got out of this country, I saw the place with new eyes when I got back. And because I had been told in school all my life, like, this is as good as it gets. Everybody just wants to be here. Everyone wants to be like us. And I go over, spend some time in Japan, spend some time in Germany as an exchange student and stuff. And, yeah, no. Actually, it turned out it was not very hard to find places that I would rather be.
You would crave a McDonald's French fry.
No, fuck that. There's so many... Motherfucker, if I want fries, there's so many better ones than those. And also, do you really think if you travel halfway across the world you wouldn't be able to find one? It is virtually impossible to miss McDonald's. They're all over the place. Like, you can go to fucking Burger King in Berlin, or probably, I don't know, probably in China as well. I don't know about Japan. I don't remember ever seeing a Burger King there. Certainly McDonald's is all over the fucking place, and at the time it was extremely expensive. But then, so was everything in Japan.
You would.
No, I wouldn't.
You would. If I flew you to a part of the world where you never
had
to listen to some R&B, you would want to listen to R&B.
Wait, what did he say?
Listen to some R&B. Never had the opportunity if I flew you to a part of the world where you never had the opportunity to listen to some R&B.
Like, he's so fucking grasping here. You can really tell how little time he's actually spent in other places. There are very few places in the world where you would not have that opportunity. There are, like, that most, I mean, you can bring your fucking playlist with you. I mean, unless you're going to some place where they take a keen interest in the stuff that's on your, SD cards and stuff. Like, but I mean, I was gonna say maybe North Korea, but then Alex Sigley, the doctoral student at Kim Il-sung University, who almost finished a doctorate in Korean literature there, but then got done for alleged espionage and a whole weird thing based on based on social media posts that actually were all about just what a nice place Pyongyang is. So much so that actually the DPRK shortly thereafter started turning out material like this, started turning out vlogs and things along very much the same lines as Alex Sigley's blog posts. But he wrote a whole bunch of like travel logs on his time there. He wrote even more after he left. After he was kicked out of the country. And I don't remember him ever saying that like he had any trouble bringing his music, on his iPod or whatever he was using. Probably not an iPod. Nobody has iPods anymore. I don't remember him saying that they took any particular interest in that sort of thing. But yeah, so where are you going to go that you would not have an opportunity to listen to R&B?
You would want to listen to R&B.
Hola, Ignacio, ¿cómo estás?
Have an attachment to the place in which you were born, to the country in which you live.
I have, like, the place I was born, I only spent a fortnight in after I was born. Literally 2 weeks later, I was someplace else. I do not remember the place that I was born. I've never been back. I don't really have much recollection of the places I spent the next 2 years of my life in. I have basically no attachment to any of those places. I've never felt any need to go back. So, no. I mean, I feel it, and it's not that I should say that I don't, like, feel an attachment to places and people, because I if anything, I have lots of them. I am, like, homesick no matter where I am. It's just a matter of what I'm kind of homesick for, because, if I'm say in Santiago, I'm missing some people and some things in like the Cincinnati area, and to some extent Wales or Berlin or Toronto. And if I'm in one of those places, then I'm a little bit homesick, for those other places, even as much as I like the place that I'm in. But specifically the place I was born, no. And it leaves me cold. I know nothing, I know where it is on the map. I know they have a shitty baseball team. I know they make shitty beer. I have absolutely no associations with it beyond that, because...
You do, right?
O sea, vocal de mesa o qué wea? ¿Son municipales o ya están en presidenciales?
Natural. And your attachment to your country is very similar to the attachment you have to your parents.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. That's an interesting way of putting it. This is like him. We're being his psychoanalyst right now, I think. It's not a mistake that he just was talking about like Freudianism, and now he's expressing his Oedipal feelings about the United States.
You love your parents, right? As bad as they may have been to you, as much pain as there is, the reason that pain might...
Well, yeah, except sometimes you don't. Sometimes they've been so fucking bad to you that you actually really don't.
Be intense is because you really love your parents, right? And the identification of one's country with one's parents is very blatant. That's why they call Germany the fatherland. That's why they call it Mother Russia.
Well, actually, there's also a Russian word for fatherland that is also used. Отечество. They've got both. Although, actually, Mother Russia is kind of an English translation. The word that is used to translate that is Rodina, which is a word that means like land of one's birth, essentially. I've never actually seen Россия Mat or Mat Россия literally used in Russian. It's always, when I look at and I see that the words Mother Russia used in English in a translation, I look and it's pretty much always Русская Родина, Российская Родина, Советская Родина, something like that.
You identify with your country in the same way you identify with your parents. You might be estranged from your parents, but your parents are part of you. They're part of your identity, part of how you see yourself.
Sometimes you spend a very long time trying to extricate that particular part of how you see yourself, because it's not actually necessarily a good thing.
Relates to your parents. And that's why even if you're estranged from your parents, even if your relationship, when your parent dies, the parent who raised you dies, it is a devastating thing because they are part of you. Your soul, your identity is tied up with your parents. Just like your soul and your identity is tied up with the country that you live in.
Okay. But that doesn't mean you necessarily identify with it. Like, this is interesting. It's like, I thought we were talking about Superman, now he's doing a Freudian with the country. After already spending some time on his favorite father figure, FDR. What time is it? Okay, we got like half an hour left. Shall we continue with this? Shall we try to fit something else in? I mean, I have this video on the looking at the failures of the IDF and the... Oh, yes, well, it is Caleb Muppet. It's been nationalistic. He is sort of a national kind of socialist. He's a national social democrat. But we can continue with this, or we can try something else. So we could look at John Elmer and Greg Stoker kind of basically roasting the IDF. That's well worth watching. I know that because I actually kind of watched it already. We've got some Twat Mulch, we've got some Xanderhole, or we can continue with this. What's everyone think? I'm just gonna... get everybody's opinion. Because this thing, I have to say, it is like squeezing... Watching this thing is... It's like squeezing the last bit of toothpaste out. This is the most constipated Caleb Muppet video I have ever seen. And that motherfucker is pretty constipated usually. So what's everyone think? Ah, no tengo. Es que en la mayor parte, bueno, en la mayor parte de las veces los videos de TYT no me interesan realmente. Ni para huevearlos sirven. But we've got Greg Stoker and John Elmer. We've got Xanderhole, we got Twat Mulch, or we can continue. We've got this the problem with Zionism and Palestinianism with Destiny and Einat Wilf. Or we can continue with this, whatever anyone thinks. I'm personally, like, getting bored out of my mind with how slow the development of this thing is. I'm waiting for it's like the cringe is so long in coming that it's just kind of fucking boring. I don't even think they have a YouTube channel still. I think fucking Alex Jones got kicked off of YouTube.
Loving the country that you live in, not
Okay.
Hello and welcome to or welcome back to Colonial Outcast, the inherent.
Oh, of course sí. Pero en YouTube o en otra parte. Okay, we're gonna look at the Destiny and Einat Wilf thing. The problem with Zionism and whatever the fuck Palestinianism is. This should be good for some bullshit.
Palestinianism as the ideology of rejecting the Jewish state has always been at the core of the conflict.
Well, now, why do you think that is? See, what you have to understand about Einat Wilf is she wrote a whole book, I mean, co-authored anyway, about how the Palestinian right of return is actually a conspiracy against the Zionist regime. Like, that Palestinians don't even want to come back, they just want to destroy the Zionist regime. And it's like, well, I wonder why that is. I wonder why they would want to get rid of a racist regime that kicked them out of their country.
That ideology has to die. We will always say yes to any peace with people who want to live next to us rather than instead of us.
So she will accept peace, but only with ethnic cleansing. Remember I was saying yesterday that the term peace is fucking meaningless? That when somebody says they want peace, it's meaningless. Here, we've got another example. She's talking about peace, and what she means is ethnic cleansing and apartheid.
What about what Israelis are doing in the West Bank, Stephen?
Well, I mean, I don't disagree with anything that was said. You obviously, if you're looking for a mutual solution, you can't call Palestinianism and then like an ideology of rejectionism and label it as you want, and then say, well, this is what Zionism.
I should note that when you hear about Israeli leftists, when like Zionists talk about Israeli leftists, Einat Wilf is totally an example of exactly what they're talking about. This is what they mean when they talk about like Israeli leftists. You know, there are people, there are actually, like, leftist anti-Zionists in the Israeli Jewish population, but they're the first ones who will tell you they're totally marginal and there are hardly any of them, because a lot of them had to leave the country because it's, like, dangerous because they're fascists everywhere. But Einat Wilf is what in Israeli discourse counts as a leftist. When she's saying all this racist shit, this is liberal Zionism.
I mean, I'm sure you're more familiar than I am with how many people so desperately want to relabel Zionism as meaning, ideology committed to ethnic superiority or committed...
Wait, how is that relabeling? I mean, that's just...
to ethnic cleansing and genocide or committed to the
Well, I mean, I don't know. Again, where's the relabeling coming in? That's like Zionism actually openly says these things. That's not relabeling. That's just that's listening to them.
Expulsion of all Arabs from the Levant or committed to the infinite expansion of Israel, etc., etc., etc. People will define Zionism how they.
I mean, the expulsion of Palestinians and other Arabs from the Levant is explicitly one of the things the current Israeli government is saying they want to do.
Want in order to hate Israel, hate Jews, whatever, which is obviously not productive. I would just say that calling an ideology like, well, we need to be anti-Palestinian or we need to reject Palestinianism, I just think is not productive.
It's not productive. Like, that's so cute. You're literally talking to somebody who is a walking example of why everybody says that Zionism is all the things that you just said that they're desperately trying to relabel it as. You're gonna try to convince her that maybe what's the point of this? That she's going to not be racist because it's not productive?
I do agree that you have to reject this idea of people that reject any kind of nation of Israel, or more specifically, a country that is interested in protecting the ethnic, I guess, Jewish people, as broad as that's become. I agree that that type of ideology needs to be rejected, but I'm just saying that we need...
Why does it need to be rejected, though? I mean, why is anti-racism something you feel that... Well, I mean, it's fucking Steve Destiny. Steve the Destiny... We know why Steve the Destiny is uncomfortable with anti-racism.
Need to have a rejection of Palestinian ideology, I think, is a pretty harsh and unproductive term. And I think that people on the Palestinian side are going to hear that as a dog whistle for, oh, you just want to subjugate us or kick us.
Why would we hear it that way? Why would we hear it that way? It sounds... I mean, it is literally exactly what she said. Maybe that's why we hear it that way. Okay, Einat Wilf looks like she's about to go on a really bad date with Vincent Vega right now.
Out completely the same way that people on that side hear, Zionism as, like, oh, that's just a conquesting, expansionist term for you guys trying to kick all of us out or whatever.
Well, which it is. I mean, which it literally is. That's all it's ever been. He's literally trying to find some way to have a Zionism that isn't all those things. So, I mean, I get it now. What he's saying here is he tries to push back against people who point out how fucked up and racist Zionism is. And he's saying that it's really unproductive for him, puts him in an uncomfortable position, because every time Zionists open their mouth, they say something racist and genocidal.
I reject, I guess, the terminology there, but I don't think I reject any of the underlying ideas, unless the terminology is being used to sneak in other underlying ideas.
Maybe it's a semantic thing. I mean, we both agree that Palestinians who want peace for both peoples, like we believe in their right to have a state, and we both agree that Israelis who use the term Zionism as meaning just wanting a home for the Jewish state, we support that as well.
Right. So as long as Palestinians don't want all their rights, you're kind of cool with it?
And we just disagree with anyone who stands on either side and rejects peace with the other people. So I think part of this is just a semantic thing.
I mean, I don't like dismissing things as semantics. Language is important. It's arguably the thing that makes us human, right? Language is one of the most important things that we have, and a lot of people use semantics. Again, I mean, if you're...
Yeah, many, but fewer than you would think. I mean, the media play a major role in exaggerating the popularity of these figures. In part because that helps to downplay the unpopularity of the people who are running against them and not doing very well.
Familiar with Jewish dog whistling, right? Like they, them, or whatever. Like, people use semantics to sneak in a lot of garbage. So I would be uncomfortable, I guess, siding with anybody that says we need to reject Palestinian ideology, because it's like, well, hold on, what does that mean? Because
well, it means rejecting the existence of Palestinians. What she's saying is she doesn't like Palestinians and she doesn't want them in her, like, fucking colonial 4chan state. And you're sitting here, like, desperately trying to find some way that this isn't horrible? Like, as if this is a matter of, like, window dressing and not of just the substance sucking.
One crowd, you might say, like, well, that just means that we need to reject the people who don't accept that an Israeli state can exist that is interested in the...
There's no such thing as an Israeli state, though. There's literally no such thing. Israel... like, has gone to court successfully, rejecting the notion that there is such a thing as an Israeli nationality. Because Israel is, and has been from its foundation, explicitly not the state of its citizens, but the state of all people who are Jewish within the meaning of the race laws wherever they live. Which is also bullshit, because they say that they claim to be acting in the name of all Jews, but most of us have absolutely no say in what they do, so that's bullshit too.
Jewish people, and that's, yeah, I think that would be the message that I think people would hear when you say that, yeah.
What are you thinking of?
So, I agree the language is important, but it's...
Fun fact, like a lot of prominent Israelis with media profiles, she's ex-army intelligence.
It's actually, this is something that is more empirical. It's not about kind of... I know people love the story of extremists on both sides, but it actually has no legs to stand on.
Really? What, is she saying that there are no Zionist extremists, or what?
If people want to look, you know, I have my longer talk, which I kind of go through the history and my personal history of also believing that the only thing that stood between us and peace are things that have to do with territory. So ending the occupation, Palestinian statehood, no settlements, only to discover again and again that what stands between us and peace is the Palestinian ideology
that there are Palestinians. Like, see what she's doing here? She's turfing Palestinians. She's doing the turf thing. You know, the TERFs say we're not against trans people. We're against transgender ideology. And all she's doing is she's doing that, but with Palestinians. She is turfing Palestinians.
In totally the existence of a sovereign Jewish state anywhere in any part of the land between the river and the sea.
Well, yes, because that is a fucking inherently racist thing. There shouldn't be that sort of thing. Any more than there should be like a fucking sovereign white state.
And the thing, and then always as I go through that, I'm sure you know, and we talked about it I think last time as well, I bring this quote by Ernst Bevin, the British foreign minister after World War II, and this will also begin to address the West Bank question. He goes to the British Parliament in February 1947 to explain why Britain failed out to fulfill the mandate to help the Jews achieve a state. It didn't.
The mandate actually didn't say anything about a state, it's worth noting. It just referred to a national home.
Failed the Arabs, there's Jordan, there's Iraq, but it fails the Jews.
Yeah, exactly, Riverine. That is exactly the move she's doing.
To explain why. And he says His Majesty is thus faced with an irreconcilable conflict. Now he calls it irreconcilable in February 1947. In February 1947, there's no occupation.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. That they called it the Yishuv, but nobody asked the Palestinians if they wanted to have a fucking Zionist enclave on their territory.
West Bank and Gaza. The West Bank is not yet called the West Bank.
Well, yes, and it was not yet actually, you know, occupied by Zionists. But like she's talking about this as if Jabotinsky didn't exist. Like Jabotinsky, the revisionist Zionist, one of the northern settlements that is now a closed military zone, is named after him. and he wrote a piece called The Iron Wall, where he said, you know, all these like liberal Zionists who think that somehow the Palestinians are just going to be happy with the idea that we want to set up this ethno-state on the territory they've lived on for centuries are completely in cloud cuckoo land. Obviously, the Palestinians don't want to have their land taken over by us, and the only way that we're going to be able to do it is by force. Like, I mean, it's worth reading if you want to get an idea just how much history she's trying to erase when she talks like this.
Because Jordan is not getting created and annexed it. There are no settlements, there's no occupation.
There are settlements, though. There is an occupation. And in fact, just as it is now, there was a practice of specifically putting settlements in places where it would provoke the Palestinians. There was also what was called the Jewish labor policy. There was a boycott of Palestinian workers and Palestinian vendors. They basically anyone caught employing Palestinians or giving them or like buying things from them was ostracized. The Palestinians were already being treated like shit, both by the Brits and by the Zionists.
There's no blockade of Gaza. There's no Gaza Strip as such. There's no there are no Arab refugees because they haven't yet waged war. There's no state of Israel. So all the things that we bring today...
Like, what she's just talking about is the exact same sort of situation that existed, say, on Turtle Island before states started getting founded out of the colonies.
As the reasons, the causes for the Palestinian anger, grievances, violence don't exist yet.
No, they do exist. You just aren't talking about them.
Which is why this is so valuable, because already in February 47 he says His Majesty's government is thus faced with an irreconcilable problem.
Yeah, and the irreconcilable problem is the exact problem that Jabotinsky wrote about in The Iron Wall, namely, we want their land, they want their land, and there's no way to reconcile that except by force. I mean, that's what Jabotinsky was saying actually years before this, and she's just sort of pretending that isn't happening. Like, this is just Zionist propaganda. There are like two versions of it, always. There's the version they do for like internal use, because you can't tell people in Israel that there's no such thing as a Palestinian, because, you know, everybody, you know, people like brag about having like grandparents who are involved in the Nakba, who have, you know, and the Jewish labor boycott, where they boycotted Palestinians to try to get them to move on and leave their country. So you can't do that. So you do... so you have to do a different version, which just says those things happened and they were good, actually. But then for Western audiences, every once in a while, some Zionist propagandist comes up with some bullshit that is so trivially refuted, but on the other hand, works quite well amongst people who don't know the history at all. Like, Joan Peters is from Time Immemorial, as an example. It was an absolute joke. Within Israel, it was not taken seriously because they knew perfectly well that there were people in the country that they colonized when they got there. But it was huge in the U.S.
Calls it irreconcilable when nothing exists in terms of West Bank or settlements or all that. And
really? I mean, what does Yishuv mean, Einat? What does Yishuv mean? It literally means settlement. And that was what the Zionist administration in Palestine was called, the Yishuv, the settlement.
And yet, and then he goes on to say, the reason that the conflict is irreconcilable between the Jews and Arabs in the land, he says, is because for the Jews, the top priority is to establish a sovereign Jewish state. So that's Zionism. That's actually a clear definition. The political movements for self-determination, the Jews want statehood, sovereignty for...
Well, no, the Zionists want statehood. The Jews have always been fucking ambivalent about it.
Jewish people, a nation, and their ancestral homeland. Doesn't have to be all of it, can be part of it. This is why the Jews say...
And yet somehow, I mean, she says this, as again, this is like fucking Caleb Muppet talking about that Henry Wallace speech, where he's talking about it as if the speech just dropped, and there isn't like 80 years of history. So yeah, they said, okay, we'll take some of it, and then they kept on taking more of it, to the point where now they're saying, why don't we also take Lebanon? Gute Nacht, also ich wollte sowieso bald Schluss machen. Okay, and it is, I noticed, time for me to be wrapping up. Thanks for everyone who joined, always good to see you, I hope you enjoyed the stream. This one might reward returning to. I mean, it seems like a great example, apart from everything else, of how liberal Zionism is just fucking racism with some extra steps. But anyway, I will be back on Friday at 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m. for the Untitled Anarchist Seagull channel. And let me just drop the link if you want to join the Discord. Anyone who's new here isn't there already, we can keep in touch in between streams. You can suggest videos there, all sorts of stuff. It's a fairly low volume Discord. Not a whole lot to keep up with so far, but that can always change. Have a good night. Buenas noches. Gute Nacht. And I will see you next week. Oh, hey, Emily S. Oh, that's a pity. But join the Discord, and I'll be here